Hello, everybody. Welcome to Joe the Lawyer. I'm your host, Joe Pometto, a practicing attorney in Pittsburgh, PA. And the title of today's video is Beat the Deal. Beat the deal. When to go to trial, when to go to war, when to go into conflict, really in any area of life, in business, I would say in war as well, and certainly in law. I'm certainly I'm no expert in war, but I love military history, and I study political science in my undergrad, so I oftentimes think about it very much. And I think about the practice of law in a way that I hope, or I think that a general would look at war, but more appropriately, a strategist from the perspective of strategy. So today I want to talk about going to trial, going to combat, and beating the deal. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm your host, Joe Pometto, Joe the Lawyer. On this show, we cover legal topics, legal news, and I give some legal advice with a disclaimer, of course. Talk to your lawyer. This is just internet. This is just internet legal information. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Think about signing up for my email list so you can get fresh notifications on my content, what's going on with my law firm, what's going on with all of my YouTube channels as well. All of that information is in the description below. So let's talk about beat the deal. And I'm going to give you two legal contexts first, right? And I'm a trial lawyer, and I've done many trials, many jury trials. Just had one recently. I wish would have went a little bit better. Part of it was good, part of it was bad. I wish it would have went better. But let's take an example here. Let's say I have a criminal defense client. So this is somebody facing criminal charges, and the penalty, if they were to go to trial and lose, is 1 month in, or I'm sorry, let's say 1 year in jail. And under Pennsylvania law, that'd be something like it's a 1 to 2 sentence. So 1 year minimum, 2 year maximum. Every sentence, pretty much every state is like this. There's something that's called the minimum maximum rule. So if you're convicted and you get a 1 year minimum sentence, you have to have a parole tail, a tail that is double what the minimum is. So that's a 1 to 2 year sentence. And so it means you can be released early. You can be paroled at 1 year. You won't necessarily be. But there's a good chance you are, as long as you behave well within the correctional system. 1 to 2 year, and depending on your priors. So let's say we have somebody who is facing conviction of a crime. I'm just going to pull something out of my mind here, a burglary. And if they go to trial and they have the trial and they're convicted, they would get the law would say they get 1 to 2 years in jail/prison. Now, if the prosecutor, before you go to trial, offers 9 months on a plea, the only reason to go to trial is if you can beat that deal. If you can beat that 9 months. If you can beat that, or I'm sorry, if you can beat that 9 months. So go to trial, lose, you get 1 year, or take the prosecutor's deal, you get 9 months. So when I'm calculating and doing my strategy for whether or not to take somebody to trial, if I don't get them less than 9 months after the trial, and hopefully you get a full acquittal and it would be 0, right, from a defense perspective. But if I don't get them better than 9 months, that's not a victory, in my opinion. That's a loss. So let's take another example. Let's say the person is facing multiple criminal charges, and an aggregate of the sentences on, let's say, a burglary, receiving stolen property, plus a robbery, right? Like 3 crimes. Let's say in aggregate, they would get 3 years. And the prosecutor's offer before you go to trial is 1 year. And you go to trial and you beat one of the charges. You beat one of the charges. You decide to go to trial, beat one of the charges. And so instead of 3 years, which you were facing, the individual gets a 2-year sentence. but it's still not as good as the offer. Even if you beat that third charge, you beat one charge, feels like at least a partial victory. No, it's not, unless you beat the deal. It's not worth it to go to trial unless you beat the deal. Let's take a civil court explanation here. You're arguing a medical malpractice case, and somebody, their injury included, I don't know, let's say the loss of an arm, and the defense is only willing to put, I'm just going to pull a number out, $500,000 on the table, $500,000 to settle the case. If you go to trial and you lose, or the jury gives you less than the $500,000, they give you $250,000, then you lost, even though you still got a verdict in your favor. So I think you have to think about negotiations and whether or not you sort of scrap negotiations and take your chance. For example, in law, at a trial, you gotta beat the deal. If you can't beat the deal, or it's unlikely that you're going to beat the deal, you should take the deal. That's what a good lawyer, what a good strategist would do. And, it's the same, it's kind of the same thing in war, right? Like, right now Russia invaded Ukraine, and they're trying to cut off, this long banana-like slice of territory from Ukraine. And, if you'd like to take a sip with me, we'll do the same time sip. Everybody raise your cup, your glass in the air. It tastes better when we sip together. Cheers. But I think you got to analyze a little bit deeper, right? Because Russia had pretty much, taken the Crimean Peninsula several years ago, and then they launched another invasion to take even greater portions of territory from the Ukraine. Well, if Russia hadn't done anything, they probably would have been able to hold on to Crimea. And they chose to go to war. They were trying to negotiate, at least they claim, but they were trying to negotiate for the Ukraine to stay out of NATO and stay out of the European Union. And they couldn't get what they wanted in those negotiations, so they invaded Ukraine, and now they're fighting over a sliver of territory that they may not be able to keep. And because they started the war, because they chose to go to trial, they chose to into conflict, they may now lose Crimea. They may lose all their territory in Ukraine and the Crimea. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for a lot of reasons. Okay, but I want to use this to talk about negotiations. If they weren't going to beat what they had before, or at least beat the deal that they had before, and the deal before was they were probably obsequiously going to hold on to the Crimea, and they just went to war, and now they're going to lose all their territory plus the Crimea. So and that's not a foregone conclusion, but I'm just sitting here giving you an example. You have to beat the deal if you're going to go to trial, if you're going to go to war. And so if you're hiring an attorney, I think this is something you should talk about. When you have a deal, you have an offer on the table. If you go to trial, can you do better than it? Because if you just end up exactly where you were, let's say you match the deal, you still lose, okay? You still lose. And sometimes, at least in civil litigation, you have to beat the deal by a lot, or it's not worth it because of the time and the money that you have to spend in the trial itself. So if the defense has $50,000 on the table and you don't want to do that, okay, you probably have to tag them for at least $75,000 in order for it to make sense that you made that choice to go to trial. So, there's more to think about when you're making a decision like that. When to go into trial, when to go into war, when to take up a conflict with somebody. You got to think about the end result and what the likelihood is that you will get the end result. And will that end result be better than the status quo? Will that end result beat the deal that you have on the table? Because if it doesn't in some way beat the deal, it probably isn't worth it. And so those are really not the only, but overwhelmingly, that's the only time you should really decide to go to trial or decide to go into conflict with somebody or something. When you can beat the status quo, when you can beat the deal. Now, there's other reasons as well, and you sort of need to take those into account. You know, sometimes, at least in criminal defense, you go to trial because you don't have a deal. There is no deal, right? The deal, but sometimes the prosecution says the deal for you is exactly what you would get if you lost at trial. So there's no reason not to go to trial. Or the deal is just not quite good enough. There's not a big enough difference between the possible result and the deal itself. So there are reasons to go to trial, but generally, good piece of advice as an attorney, and if you're dealing with an attorney that has a case of yours, is can that person beat the deal? Do you think you're going to beat the deal? And remember, there's other reasons, but I would argue this is one of the overwhelming reasons to go to trial. And I think you should think about this anytime you're going to step into conflict with somebody, whether it's an argument with someone, you know, in your personal life, or certain business decisions as well that are on the table for you. I think this is a good mode of analysis. Are you going to end up in a situation that is better than the status quo? Are you going to, if you turn down a deal, are you going to end up somewhere that's better than the deal that you had? Just something to think about. You know, and I was, in a way, it's common sense, but I think it's good to verbalize it, because at least what I see in the law is I think a lot of people lose track of this. I really do. I think a lot of lawyers do. And I think probably business persons do as well, or anybody in any very competitive field. So I hope you found this video interesting, informative. I hope it's something that you can use in your personal life, and maybe it enlightened the legal field for you a little bit. Don't go to trial. Don't go into conflict if you can't beat the deal. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Think about signing up for my email list. Information is in the description below. My name's Joe Pometto, Joe the Lawyer. All right, everybody, have a terrific day. Thanks. Bye.